Israel Update with Gadi Tao and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been 1 year and 43 days since this war began. It's now 19th of November, 2024, and it's a Tuesday. Yaakov Wilner is producing this show. Mike, correct me? Wilner, because we write his name Jacob, so I get hung up on that to say Yaakov because that's how he pronounces it, because that's the Hebrew pronunciation. And our producer speaks Hebrew, which makes this show even better. There's no one here that doesn't understand Hebrew except my cat. I'm Gadi Tao in Tel Aviv, and in a, well, is it undisclosed, Mike? I think you're on the program.
Relatively undisclosed.
You're on the program. So you want to tell us a word about, you're in Jerusalem, and you're going to go to a conference. You want to say a word about that before we begin?
No, let's get moving.
Oh, that's undisclosed? Okay. You'll surprise the crowd. The big crowd, by the way. It's going to be a big crowd, big evening. Israel is reeling around the parasha, the scandal of the arrest and detention without trial and with hardly a chance to see a lawyer of a handful of IDF soldiers. We will speak about that because it's very, very confusing. I tried to explain this yesterday to a British journalist, and everyone is confused. And part of the problem is the obfuscation, which is not accidental. A rope for hanging was suddenly found in the cell of one of these people. How was it smuggled there? You know what I tweeted about that, Mike?
No.
Jeffrey Epstein. He didn't commit suicide. But let's have the news first after you finish your coffee.
Yeah, you caught me just when I was having coffee. But, Gadi, this is Israel Update. And we together are, what are we, Gadi?
We are as possible under the circumstances. What was the first word?
As sane as possible.
As sane as possible under the circumstances. Yes.
We work so hard to develop that tagline. We have to start using it. We are as sane as possible under the circumstances. Okay. So, Gadi, last Friday, Barak Ravid reported in Axios that Israel had targeted and destroyed a secret nuclear facility in Parchin in Iran during its retaliation last October.
According to spoke about that, yeah.
Yes. We'll come to that later. According to Israeli and U.S. officials quoted in Axios, the strike, quote, significantly damaged Iran's effort over the past year to resume nuclear weapons research, unquote. This specific nuclear site was previously thought to be inactive prior to this attack and prior to this report. Prime Minister Netanyahu seemed to confirm this report in a speech delivered to the Knesset on Monday, stating that, quote, there is a specific component in their nuclear program that was hit in this attack, unquote. On another issue, Gadi, talks continue to progress toward a ceasefire with Hezbollah on Israel's northern border. On Monday, Reuters reported that a top Lebanese official had confirmed that Hezbollah had accepted U.S. conditions for a ceasefire with the full implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. In another report, it was stated that the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei had sent a message that he was in favor of a ceasefire as well. White House envoy for Lebanon, Amos Hochstein, will travel to Beirut to work on this agreement. Another sign that things are moving along. On Monday, Prime Minister Netanyahu criticized the Biden administration's approach to this war in a speech before the Knesset, and he confirmed things that, Gadi, you and I have been saying all along in this war. He said the U.S. had reservations and suggested that we not enter Gaza. This is a direct quote, that we not enter Gaza. It had reservations about entering Gaza City, Khan Yunis, and most critically, strongly opposed entry into Rafah. He said that he stood up to the U.S. pressure not to respond. In addition, he said he stood up to U.S. pressure not to respond to the Iranian attacks. Also on Monday, the Biden administration continued its monthly tradition of sanctioning Israelis, something again that we reported here before anywhere else, by imposing sanctions on Amana, which is a settlement development company in the West Bank, or in Judea and Samaria, as we say here on Israel Update. Former ambassador to Israel, American ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, said that the sanctions are, quote, interfering in an entirely domestic Israeli zoning issue, unquote. On Sunday, the state attorney's office informed the court that it was going to indict Eli Feldstein, as you were just saying, Gadi, as part of the leaks affair in the prime minister's office. Feldstein is accused of leaking classified intelligence to a German paper in order to influence the media's conversation around the hostage issue and to blame Sinwar rather than Netanyahu for the lack of a deal. And finally, Gadi, last night, a missile or rocket from Hezbollah hit Ramat Gan, which is not that far from you, actually, and 5 people were. I think the missile was intercepted, but nonetheless it injured 5 people. That's close enough, Gadi, for you to start taking this personally.
The fragments, like what do you call them? They're not shrapnels. They are what?
Shrapnel. No, I guess you'd say fragments of I don't know. I don't know what we call them.
So anyway, if shrapnel,
there's a lot of metal when you have interceptors and missiles colliding. A lot of metal falls to the ground.
So if shrapnel, so also let me correct your Hebrew pronunciation. It's amana. Amana is the settling arm of Gush Emunim.
That was a little bit passive aggressive.
It was a little bit passive aggressive.
It didn't. Look, I don't mind that having my
No, I just want to keep
corrected, but I'm worried about how you look to the audience when you get passive aggressive like that. You look a little bit.
Well,
it's not good.
Thank you for saving my image. So let's start with trying to untangle what is going on with Eli Feldstein. I don't know if you saw, but on the right-wing feed is all outrage. Inoon Magal, who is the host of the very popular show The Patriots on Channel 14, recorded himself walking to the car, saying that the Shabak, the Shin Bet, the security service, and possibly the IDF, the state attorney, and others were murdering witnesses or suspects, because a rope and a suicide letter were found in Eli Feldstein's cell, where he was with a few Palestinian terrorists. They put him among terrorists. And so that was apparently the excuse to transfer him to suicide watch, where he is in a tiny cell without a mattress, with only a blanket and a light over his head turned up 24/7. He already told his lawyer when he saw him that he wants to die, that his life is no longer worth it to him. And people are asking why. And that's, I guess, the main thing here. So let's try to separate the different facets. First, there is a leak to the Bild, which we know about. The leak to the Bild, as you said, it helped blame Sinwar and not Netanyahu for the lack of a hostage deal. That is certainly not that certainly doesn't harm Israel's interests, not like, say, leaks that cabinet ministers are against holding on to the Philadelphia corridor, or against having the Philadelphia corridor as a condition that Israel will not give up in a hostage deal. So there were people who were undermining the Israeli position. What was leaked to the Bild is not undermining Israel's position, but still, it's illegal to leak.
Can I interrupt you there?
Sure.
So I'm not arguing with you. Well, a little bit, but I think I got this one wrong a couple of weeks ago when I said I thought 2 weeks from now we wouldn't be talking about this. We clearly are. So I clearly got it wrong. I mean, this is a much bigger deal than I understood. However, there still might be embedded in this a serious investigation that has become also very politicized. Because the argument that I was told early on in this was that the document that they leaked to the German press was received. It wasn't just a document that was found by Israeli soldiers when they took over a tunnel. It was transmitted to Israeli intelligence by a human being, and so the transmission of it to the press, the fact that the Israelis had it, exposed a very sensitive source, and so that is it was legitimately a sources and methods issue, and that needed to be investigated. That's what I was told, and that's a very serious argument, actually. But I clearly there's a hell of a lot more going on here than just that.
But what I said is just, it's just the top of the iceberg, because I know for a fact from I had an interview with a member of Knesset, Amit Halevi, from the Foreign Affairs and Security Committee, the Security and Foreign Affairs Committee of the Knesset, and apparently one of the soldiers detained did not pass information to anyone except the Prime Minister's office. So they are holding someone like a terrorist, trying to break his spirit because he took a document to Israel's Prime Minister after he discovered that his superiors, despite designating that document as important, refused to pass it on to their own prime minister. So for that, someone is detained like a terrorist. So they don't only insist on this detention, but there was a court of I don't know what the American terms are, justice of the peace, right? There's the lowest court, the low court, Bet Mishpat HaShalom, the peace court, ruled that they should release the suspects, and that was appealed by the state attorney to the higher court, I guess you'd say the appellate court, and that court also ruled that there is no reason to keep holding them in custody at all, but certainly under these conditions. And so after that, in Israeli law does not allow you to appeal to the Supreme Court with an order to release someone from detention. However, there is a very rare procedure by which you can appeal to the Supreme Court to ask permission to appeal. And the appellate court granted them a 48-hour time because they said that the Supreme Court was closed for the weekend. Although there's always a Toran, there's always a judge on duty. So they had to wait. So despite having an order to release them, this is crazy. This is not a regular thing. They asked for a permission to appeal. They were granted the time to appeal, and then they reached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court gave them a 24 hours or a little less than that to get their Atzarat Tovea, declaration of the prosecutor. Now that procedure allows the prosecutor to say, we need 5 more days of detention because after that we are going to indict them. So they got 5 more days. They're torturing these people. If you sleep on the floor without a mattress with light over your head, so every day you don't know when a day starts and ends. They're taking them out of the cell with the what do you call it, a hood on their faces. They're treating them like terrorists, and they got 5 more days, at the end of which they will have to indict them. Note, Mike, that until they are indicted, we don't really know what the charges are, because these are all procedures between the state attorney and the judges to which their lawyers are not privy. These are all secret procedures. So people are being held like in a totalitarian state, with their lawyers completely in the dark, helpless, not knowing what is going on until we see the indictments. And people are asking, what are the purposes? Because, there have been so many leaks. If you take Ronen Bergman's cell phone, then you would have 500 leaks.
Barak Ravid and Ronen Bergman
and all the rest of them, Nir Dvori in Channel 12, Amnon Abramovich, all of them. And some of these leaks are clearly undermining Israel's position, yet they are not investigated. As we said, Netanyahu called, I was going to say Ronen Bar, the head of the Shin Bet, and said, investigate all these other leaks. I've been asking you to investigate leaks from our negotiation team with Hamas. Hamas knew about our negotiations because the team was leaking. They were undermining our position to return the hostages, our bargaining position in the negotiations.
The team on which Ronen Bar sat.
And especially we know with great probability who was leaking from there. And Ronen Bar, apparently, according to one journalist, just said, give me that in writing. He wouldn't take orders from his own prime minister. And now note that so Netanyahu did that. And the letter was published, and that Mike, I think, is a bit. Netanyahu is now telling them, "I know what your game is," and now the public will know that you are selectively investigating people in my office, and you're not investigating other leaks. So here, I'll just lay out what, since something sinister seems to be going on, we'll give allowance to your theory, but it doesn't apply to all of them. No.
I'm not pushing a big theory. I'm just making that one little point.
And I think you're right.
Clearly, there's this other thing going on now. But
I'll tell you why I think even the right-wing feed is getting it wrong, because the left-wing feed is just saying, "Oh, this is terrible. Leaks are terrible. All these people who leak all the time. Leaks are terrible. We'll investigate them." and of course, Netanyahu's office is crawling with people who are irresponsible, and the rest, the anti-Bibi crowd. That's one form of BS. But then you have the right-wing feed saying they are trying to show that the leak was authorized by Netanyahu. So that's a theory everybody is running with. And so they're trying to connect the leak to the prime minister. And that theory seems to me bogus, because what if the prime minister is the head of the cabinet, which is in charge of the army, and he is entitled to declassify any document that he thinks is in the Israeli interest? Although Netanyahu did not say this, he has been saying, I didn't know about it. I read about it in the press. But suppose push comes to shove, and they connect it to Netanyahu somehow, or they break the witnesses. They try to turn them state because they can't take it anymore, and they'll invent some lie that they discussed it with Netanyahu. We've seen this happen with the Netanyahu cases. These state witnesses walked back their testimonies when they were under oath. So this theory seems to me very shaky. Another theory says that they are doing what the state attorney did in the Netanyahu criminal cases. They are taking witnesses, and we know this. This is not a theory. We have quotes from the investigation saying, give me something on Netanyahu. So you put pressure on a witness. You have, it's Laventry, I never can pronounce that name, Beria, Stalin's chief of secret police, who said, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. So they're detaining someone and saying, give me something on Netanyahu. That's another theory. And a third theory, not necessarily contradicting these two, is that this is a warning to anyone who would blow the whistle on the attempts by officers of the IDF to hide information from their own prime minister. So let me quote here this is mind-boggling. And I heard this from Noga Arbel, who was a researcher on the Kohelet right-wing think tank. She went to an INSS event, and there someone said...
INSS, the establishment think tank.
The establishment, which establishment? It's considered connected to the democratic establishment in America.
But it's the Israeli security establishment's think tank.
Yeah, and they have a very clear line. And what she heard them say there is that some material should not be passed on to the politicians because they are liable to misinterpret it.
Right.
This is absolutely crazy. And this gives you a clue to why these people did not wake Netanyahu up on the night between the 6th and 7th of October. They compartmentalized, you say, midur. They cut him off the information because in their minds, since the establishment is well to the left, since in their minds, this wild messianic right-wing nutcase government is irresponsible, and if they get the wrong information, they'll start a war. So these people who did not understand the information right in front of their noses, who did not see a war coming even 2 hours and a half before the war started, did not wake up Netanyahu and his Minister of Defense then, Yoav Gallant. And I think the reasoning is the one that they taught themselves during the struggle over the reform, that politicians are irresponsible and it is up to us to preserve the peace. Now that must strike an American as something utterly familiar.
Yeah, it's completely familiar. It's familiar, by the way, before the Trump era. I encountered things like this when I was in the White House. We had there was a debate going on when I was in the White House about whether Iran was killing Americans in Iraq or not. Clearly they were. The information about this was, for a whole bunch of reasons, we don't need to go into it, but it was being held in Iraq, and it was not by both the military and the CIA, and it was not getting up to Washington. And I got word of this through some back channels, and I was young and naive. I had been an academic, and then I was working in the White House suddenly, and I did not know the wily ways of Washington. But I brought some guys who were from within the intelligence community into the White House to brief us on some of this stuff, and it caused some real ripples because it was because we were going over the heads of the intelligence officials in Washington.
Yeah,
it was a real eye opener for me. And so let me just ask you, what's your theory of what's going on, and then I'll tell you what I think is going on if it's different from yours.
Okay, so the difference between your example and what I think is going on is that these people saw documents that they thought the prime minister should see, and they went to their superiors and said, this is something the prime minister should see, and their superiors blocked them from blocked the passage of those documents.
Yeah, the same thing in the story I'm telling you. I mean, I didn't tell it very well, but this is the same thing. But anyway, go ahead.
But the point is, they actively blocked that information, and then some responsible officer said, no, this is something the prime minister should see, he's certainly entitled to see. So that should be at most a disciplinary problem within the army. It's certainly not, they are prosecuting this under the clause of the law, which blames people for passing a secret information into the hands of people who are not entitled to see them, and they're using this clause vindictively now to warn anyone else. And note, and this has been my point from the beginning, this war started maybe because this information was blocked. Now, any attempt to show things that would embarrass intelligence and show that they hid stuff from the prime minister, it can be leaked. So it's an investigation to prevent not just the flow of information to the prime minister, but also to expose the misdeeds of the intelligence officers who've been conducting this operation. And Netanyahu holds a card in his hand now, and I think he's hinting at using it. If he says publicly, I know that you have been hiding information from me, then these people will be in trouble. So I think they are playing with fire.
So let me play back to you what in very general terms, what I think is going on, and you tell me if you agree. They are number one. There are two fights going on simultaneously. One is simply the fight about who controls the information, and they want to isolate the prime minister, and they want to punish anyone who tries to prevent the isolation of the prime minister. So they don't want to just punish Eli Feldstein and everybody else, but this is a warning to anyone who's working on the prime minister's staff that or any subordinate inside the intelligence or military system who would think of going around circumventing superior officers in order to go to the prime minister's staff, that if you do that, your life will be destroyed. And so they're working at both the supply side of the information to the prime minister's office and the receiving side with the prime minister's office, and that will then isolate the prime minister and make his knowledge of what's happening will be completely dependent on the official channels, and that will strengthen all of the heads of the military and intelligence bureaucracies against the prime minister's office. That's number one. And then number two, there is also, against the background of all of this, there is also the question about October 7th and the responsibility for it. Because if people around the prime minister can easily reach down into the system and pull up the raw intelligence, and including intelligence from previous periods, from earlier periods, then they can start building a different picture of what happened on October 7th. So both in terms of just maintaining the power balance, a favorable power balance against the prime minister's office, and in order to protect reputations about October 7th, this is what they're engaged in. Do I have it?
I think you have it absolutely right, and I'll add just one more part of the context. A lot of people are saying, and I think they're right, that the various apparatuses of the anti-Netanyahu establishment are now desperate to successfully conclude their attempts at ousting Netanyahu before Trump gets into the White House. So all hands on board now, trying to do everything and anything. This supports the interpretation that they're trying to squeeze anything out of someone. And we will not get into this in detail, but Netanyahu's trial is going on. And Netanyahu asked to postpone his own testimony, which is, of course, the centerpiece of the defense, which should start this December. And the court has refused to grant him a 2-month postponement because they said it's in the public interest that the trial continue. And obviously,
despite the war, the existential war that's going on.
Yeah, and so here's the trap that they're laying for him. And I think if they try to pull this one, they must be incredibly power drunk, and this is an incredibly silly. What happened when there was talk about incapacitating the prime minister? They invented something called essential incapacitation, which is, incapacitation. If you read the I think it's the 25th Amendment, is it? That
oh, don't ask me. I don't know anything about my country. When the president can't perform his duties because he's in a coma, say, so there is a procedure and who can take his place. I think Alexander Haig once tried to implement that, and or I don't. I won't. No. He just famously, when after Reagan got shot, he famously said, "Don't worry, I'm in charge here." And
yeah.
Nobody ever forgets.
So yeah, being shot at, if you are hit, that's incapacitation. But they invented something that's called essential incapacitation. That you're healthy and you're fine, but something prevents you from concentrating on your duty, and that can be a trial. So Netanyahu then argued that he's fine and he can handle the trial along with being a prime minister. And so they they let him graciously, they approved of the election results and let us have the prime minister we elected, the real bosses in the country, which is the juristocracy. But here's the trap, Mike. They're saying, well, you said you can run the country and the trial. Now you're walking back on this. Now you're suddenly saying, well, I can't do both. There's a war. I can't give the testimony. So now basically you're admitting essential incapacitation. Now they haven't moved to actually implement this, but this is the trap they're laying. Currently, what the prime minister said is, okay, I'll go ahead and do the testimony. And what I think he can start canceling sessions of his testimony. It's because, say you're up for testimony and you say, I can't make it now because, God forbid, one of my children is sick. Or I can't come this morning because I broke my leg. Or you say, I can't come this morning because we're going to kill Nasrallah. So what are they going to do? I mean, what if he starts canceling sessions? Are they going to try and incapacitate him? The right doesn't go out to the streets easily to demonstrate. But if they try to take a successful wartime prime minister out of office for this ridiculous invention of jurists, of which there is no parallel in any democracy. Imagine this. The Attorney General of Israel will declare incapacitation. So the Attorney General of Israel can remove a sitting prime minister on her own authority. That is incredible.
I had a taxi driver here tell me
in Jerusalem in
Jerusalem. He told me that he told me exactly what you said on this exact issue, and he said, he was complaining. It was like talking to you. He was complaining about the Kaplanistim, and then he said they don't understand basically he said the silent majority is right wing, and the right wing has been very quiet. But if they continue with this, the right wing is going to go out into the streets. And then you're really going to see the power of the right. Now, I took it with a grain of salt. In general, I'm not a believer of the Tom Friedman school of international international analysis, where you ask the cab driver what to think, and then you. But I got in trouble. I wrote an article about Israel a couple of years ago with the whole judicial reform thing. I had this cab driver who told me that Aaron Barak had said that they had never had a Moroccan Supreme Court justice because they couldn't find one that had the right.
Just explain what Moroccan is, because people will think that we import judges.
Oh, Moroccan meaning a Jewish Moroccan immigrant, and so a Mizrahi. They never.
And that's a question of social discrimination and.
So the people on the, if you're Moroccan, you're usually more often than not right wing, and Mizrahi rather than Ashkenazi and so on. And so, anyway, he told me that Aaron Barak said we couldn't find one that had the proper qualifications, and I wrote an article. And I quoted the cab driver, and I said, of course, Aaron Barak never said that, but I was just giving it as an example of how people perceive this against the ethno-political backdrop. And then on Twitter, people corrected me. They said, Aaron Barak did say that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
He did. Yeah. So when this cab driver told me that if they continue with this, the right's going to go out and force, and then they're going to see, I immediately said, okay, that's the kind of thing people say, that they have power fantasies, but we'll see. Anyway, I got one of my cab drivers told me the truth, and I got it wrong. Well, I don't know if this cab driver got it right or not. We'll find out.
Okay, so this is, I guess, is the complete picture of what many on our side of the feed are calling the. I'll use Lee Smith's phrase, the permanent coup against Netanyahu. The permanent coup is just moving into high gear because they want to do something before the Trump administration comes to power. So, Mike, maybe you can say a word of why you think they are so desperate to finish Netanyahu off before Trump.
Well, I think that it's the combination. I would guess if this is in fact what's going on, I think we have two things going on simultaneously here. One is that we seem to be moving pretty close to a ceasefire in Lebanon. And I can't tell whether this is really going to happen or not. We should switch to that subject in a minute. But then, of course, we have Donald Trump coming in, and Donald Trump he's put Marco Rubio as Secretary of State and Mike Waltz as the National Security Advisor, and Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense, and Mike Huckabee as the ambassador to the ambassador to Israel, and Elise Stefanik as the ambassador to the United Nations. And all these people are incredibly pro-Israel, incredibly anti-Iran, and I don't think it's going to be it's going to be completely smooth sailing for U.S.-Israeli relations with regard to Iran under Netanyahu, but it's going to be really good.
Under Trump.
No, yeah, I'm sorry. For Netanyahu, it's going to U.S.-Israeli relations are going to be perfect, but they're going to be very, very good and much better than they were under Biden. And of course, Netanyahu is already signaling that. So this has got to make them nervous, and they have to think that maybe the end of the war, if there's a ceasefire, that will give them an opportunity to say, okay, there's a lull in the war now, so we can get back to politics as usual. Perhaps that's what's on their mind. I don't know. I can't think for these people. You understand these people better than I do. It's really quite shocking to me the lengths to which they're going. And I didn't want to believe it. I didn't, but I guess the overwhelming evidence is pushing me in the other direction.
Yeah, and these people who should be home, they should be. A lot of people are saying, why isn't Herzi Halevi, the IDF chief of staff, and Ronen Bar, why aren't they on trial? Because they did not pass the information to the prime minister, and a war broke out on their watch while they did it. So, but enough about that. Let's go to Lebanon. And I'm reading the news about Lebanon with apprehension. I saw that many journalists are now estimating that there is actually a fair chance that the current Hochstein mediation proposal will actually produce a ceasefire, and I'm not sure this is a good idea for Israel.
I have the same. I would put it at about I don't know. Let's say 75% probability, and 25 that there will be a 70% probability, 75% probability that there will be a ceasefire, and a 25% possibility that there won't be. Benny Gantz came out.
So you remember, think it's almost a done deal?
Well, clearly the Iranians want it. I think huge segments.
Ergo, we should not.
Well, I think there are large segments of the Israeli establishment that want it as well. The IDF is tired. The people have been on Miluim Israel isn't built for a war of attrition, which is what it's in. It isn't built for a year-long war. The military isn't built for that. People are tired. They would like a rest, and I think that they're even.
Well, we obviously handled the 1 year war better than anyone thought.
Absolutely. If you and I had talked about this at the beginning and had an inkling that it was going to last a year, and we're
actually talking about something you said really stayed with me, and it stayed like a premonition, it just hung over my head. I don't know if I even told you. You said in one of our earliest shows, you said that you enumerated the war aims, which were to eliminate the military and government capability of Hamas, to return the hostages, and to make sure that Gaza doesn't endanger Israel again. And you said that Israel had a 10 to 20% chance of achieving those war aims. And that was, and it looked like you were right up until, I think, the beepers. Yeah.
That's how I felt until the beepers. The beepers changed everything. I don't know. I saw also the willingness of the prime minister to push against the Americans. The thing that I think I had over a lot of people who were doing analysis on Israel is that both because I have studied history and because I worked in the White House, I understand how crucial American support is to an Israeli war effort. And I understood from moment one that the Americans were restraining the Israelis. You remember how hard it was to talk even to Israelis, the pro-Israelis in Washington, and to Israelis. It was very hard to tell them that Biden was not being 100% supportive of Israel, because the Israeli leadership was not in a position to go out publicly and say Biden is not supporting us, because they were so dependent on him, and everyone wanted to believe. They were so shocked by October 7th and all of the rape, the murder, the killing, and then all of the anti-Semitism around the world that exploded. People were very grateful for the support that they did get from Joe Biden. He was very good at presenting that that support was all he was doing and not restraining Israel at all. But I always knew the restraint was there, and I had doubts about Israel's ability to stand up to it. Prime Minister Netanyahu has done an absolutely masterful job of negotiating that restraint. We have to say that. As I've said to you many times, I don't see myself. I am a fan of Prime Minister Netanyahu, but I don't see our job here as to be fans. My job is to be an analyst. But I think objectively, he has done a job that no one else in Israel could have done. Nobody understands the U.S.-Israeli relationship in all of its dimensions the way he does. Nobody understands the power that Israel has to stand up to the United States the way he does, and nobody exercises it as intelligently as he does.
But the left here is, we are. It's obvious that the Trump and Trump's team are strongly supportive of Israel, but the fact that a lot of people here were anti-Trump and pro-Kamala Harris is in exactly that fact, because the faction in Israel who still believes in the two-state solution knows it cannot convince the Israeli public to make that choice. And so their dream is an anti-Israeli president. This sounds very harsh, but their dream is a president that would put his or her foot down so strongly as to force us to go to a Palestinian state. When Amos Shoken, the publisher of Haaretz, said this in London, there was a great uproar here because it suddenly the mainstream saw this. But this is all they talk about on the left for years. I know, I came from there. The great hope, the Messiah, is an American president who's hostile enough to force us to do what everybody knows we should do. Now, of course, they don't call it hostile. They call it tough love, or they call it the adult in the room. And then they fantasize about Kamala Harris, and they don't understand the Iran issue. They're saving Israel from itself. And they've even given up our sovereignty. They've given up our sovereignty. So for them to save Israel from the evil right, they're willing for us to become, again, a province of the American empire, which is subordinate to an American president. Because, Mike, American presidents are always benevolent, humanistic, and believe in human rights.
I think
this so in your Declaration of Independence, also in the Constitution.
I think this picture of the world that you are describing is becoming more and more clear to people, and it's been fascinating to me in the United States to see how many people now see Trump as the great tangerine wrecking ball to throw at a corrupt establishment, and it's taken 8 years for this picture to become clear, but now they see it. What do you? I see the smile on your face
It's just the word tangerine. I love the titles of Tom Wolfe's books.
Oh, the tangerine.
I could have demonstrated that. I more or less remember it. You want to try?
No, I'm trying to.
The candy-colored tangerine flaked streamlined baby. How's that for a description of Trump?
Tom Wolfe was a great author.
He is the greatest anthropologist of American society by far. I didn't always like him as a novelist because he doesn't believe that in human individuality at all. Everybody.
No, he's not really a novel. He's a reporter. He's of a certain kind.
Yeah, but he's first of all, he's an amazing. His facility with language is unbelievable. He does things no one does, and he's very perceptive. As a novelist, everyone is the same. So everyone wants to climb up the social ladder. That's the only motivation anyone has. So they're not particular. But in terms of society, he has an essay called "The Last American Hero" about Junior Johnson, who was a NASCAR, was a race car driver.
I don't know.
And he, where he got the talent. He, from age 16, he was dealing in bootleg whiskey, and he had to drive to escape policemen. And it's a great essay. And just in terms of language, it begins with the word cars, with I think 3 exclamation marks. Cars, red, blue. And it's like everything with capital letters, exclamation marks, and he can play music, and he does accents. Oh, never mind. I have the whole Tom Wolfe oeuvre right here, right here.
My favorite essay of his is the one about, is it Leonard Bernstein's apartment in New York with all the am I
Radical Chic?
Yeah, Radical Chic. He read What Bothers You and Me about the intellectual left. He read that very clearly back in the 60s.
That just to mention to our listeners, this is an essay about one of the Black Panthers in a gala donation event at Leonard Bernstein's home, and all these upper class New Yorkers are just fawning over this jewel of rough beauty and justice, which is which of the Black Panthers? I don't remember.
I don't know if I'm mixing him up with what's his name, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Hunter Thompson.
Hunter Thompson.
But also he has in maybe it's the electric Kool-Aid acid test. He's got an example of all these kinds of people hanging around Hell's Angels as well. Seeing them as an expression of authentic working class sentiment, and it's when you see this kind of thing, it's completely ridiculous. What are we doing now? We have something else to talk about, don't we? Or
Iran. The last aspect of the ceasefire is, I think, you mentioned that Iran supports the ceasefire.
Yeah, Iran supports the ceasefire.
It's desperate to save.
Oh no, you know what? No, what I wanted to say is, and what we don't know, but we can suspect, is what the Trump team is signaling to Netanyahu. And it's very hard to know what's really going on, but I suspect that the Trump team has signaled to Netanyahu that they would like to see a ceasefire when they come in as well. So that's another factor. If that's the case, I don't know it to be the case at all.
But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe Netanyahu is faking openness to the deal in order to pacify things in this rocky passage before January 20.
It could be. He might just be. Look, they're under pressure. There's a Security Council resolution that is being contemplated against Israel, calling for an immediate ceasefire. There are these sanctions. There's more on the sanctions front to come. As I think I said here last week, that the British, the Canadians, and the Australians have a sanctions package against Ben Gvir and Smotrich ready to go. Did I tell you about this?
No.
Oh,
no, it's really important.
Oh, really? I didn't tell you about this?
Yeah.
No, the British, the British, the Canadians, and the Australians have already put together a sanctions package, and they're going to release it at some point soon. This is the plan. I don't know where it stands right now, but this plan is put together before the election, the American election, actually. And the Biden administration is contemplating associating itself with this sanctions package. There's also a possible Security Council resolution in the works, not the one that we read about in the press, but another one that will expand on what will express what the international community, if I can use that euphemistic term, regards as a proper settlement between Israel and the Palestinians for a two-state solution. The sort of parameters, which we have a good idea of what those parameters are. Those are the Clinton parameters, the Kerry parameters, all of the UN Resolution 2334. All of the way that they describe the green line as an international boundary, and that there'll be land swaps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this resolution will also then probably take note of the sanctions that have been put out by Canada, Britain, and Australia. Exactly in what form all this is going to take, we don't know. I don't know what I learned about this before the election. I don't know what the incredible victory of Donald Trump has done to the calculations about this, but we should understand this is all being orchestrated by the Biden White House. Its fingerprints are all over this. It doesn't matter who initiates it, if the British initiate it, if the Australians do it. It was just like, you remember UN Resolution 2334, which was issued in December of 2016 as Trump was coming in. That was pushed through the Security Council by that mighty power, New Zealand. The United States was powerless to stand up to the sentiment of the international community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, Obama was behind all of that. The same sort of thing is going on now. We just had this major sanctions package against, what's the name of the company, Gotti? In the
NSO, was it?
Oh, Amana.
No, it's not a company. It's the. I was going to say before you accused me of being passive aggressive. Yeah, Amana is the settlement arm of Gush Emunim. Gush Emunim is and Amana is the organized organ of settlement. So they're actually, if their aim is to target settlement, they chose the right. Right. They chose a main target. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm embarrassed that I didn't know that. Let the record show that there was a hole in my.
There are things about Israel you don't know. I'm utterly shocked, Mike, because I have to say that the terms that you ask me to explain to you are those that only advanced speakers of Israelis, which is Hebrew slang, can even know exist. Ralebet.
Okay, so there was a hole in my education.
You know, many Israelis still don't know what Ralebet is, so you have a good time explaining it. Yeah,
no, that still amazes me. Okay, anyway, how are we doing on time? Where are we now?
I think we need to get to answering our commentators, the comment readers' mails, and then the dumb mistake.
We have mail. So Smitty says, Gotti, I have a story for you guys that you might find amusing. I was having a drink with some left-wing Israeli friends of mine. They were visiting us here in Melbourne, Australia. We have an audience in Australia.
Well,
I met them at a quiet bar. When the drinks arrived at our table, the three of us charged our glasses and said l'chaim, but I chose to say ad nitzachon muchlat, so until total victory. My friend's wife nearly fell off her chair and said, "Don't you dare say that."
Yeah,
total victory is Netanyahu's slogan. It's
not just Netanyahu's slogan; it's Netanyahu's victory, and a lot of people on the left suffer from such strong cases of Ralebet that they'd rather see Israel lose and not Netanyahu win.
So anyway, Smitty said my first thought was of you guys. So that was very nice. Thank you, Smitty. I'm glad that we are on the same page. Then Abraham Life says, "What a fantastic show! You speak about all the things that drive us completely crazy with a human and friendly, light spirit that helps me to be sane under the circumstances." Thanks. What's our slogan, Gotti?
As sane as possible,
under the circumstances. That's right. Official Zobumufu Official Zobo Mufu says, I'd like to have a live episode in New York City. I'd pay $20 for that, ideally. Definitely not $1,000. Okay, if we do such a thing, I think it's going to cost more than $20. Sorry, but thank you.
But we're going to have discount for soldiers on duty. So if you're an Israeli soldier on duty in New York, you can come in for $20. And if you come in uniform, you know this thing in Israel, soldiers get discount in uniform.
Yeah. Okay. Then Jonathan Ayal 6652. He says, live Miami event. I'd pay $125 plus. All the based...
That includes travel expenses, it seems.
He says all the based Jews are in Florida now. You need to think about that. We want the based Jews. Okay, and Devori Stoller 5177 says, love your podcast. Please demand that Gotti speak less and let you speak more. Huh? How do you like that one? Tell him an Israeli woman said so. Of course, I love hearing you both. So she still likes you. She just wants more. She wants more of me.
Yeah, but your idea that a dating service for me will spontaneously occur in this podcast has just flew out the window.
No, what do I have to explain to you that
she's playing hard to get?
Well, yeah, she's coming and picking a fight with you so that you'll pay attention. Come on, man. You know how this works.
Are you saying something or quoting Biden?
I'm imitating him. Someone did ask if I'm married. I'm very happily married, by the way. I'm the most happily married man in the world. So this dating service is only for Gotti. Gotti's right to suggest putting a territorial price on Lebanon for its war. Gotti is right to suggest that. For a long time, Western armies had not been able to win anything. Oh, this is, by the way, from Leonid 3438. Gotti is right suggesting that Lebanon has to pay a territorial price. For a long time, Western armies had not been able to win anything, and part of it is precisely the inviolability of borders enforced by the international order only against Western parties. Russia is now demonstrating that non-Western states are certainly getting away with enlarging their territory in a war of aggression, no less. I hear that Pete Hegseth is a serious thinker, and so he must understand this point. He may be the right person to raise this with. It seems the best way to impress on some people the fact that they lost. This is the best way to impress on some people that they lost.
All right. There we go. So we are off to the dumbest take, and here's my dumbest take. There's a tweet from Barak Ravid with a leak from 2 days ago. Maybe someone will investigate it. It says that the heads of the security establishment, the head of the Shin Bet, Ronen Bar, the head of the Mossad, Dedi Bernea, the chief of staff, Herzi Halevi, and one other guy, the head of the negotiations team, or the authority that treats that takes care of the hostages issue, Nitzan Alon, all think that Hamas is not likely to give up its conditions of total cessation of the war. And if the government of Israel is interested in a deal to release the hostages, it needs to get more flexible in its current position. So no matter how, we just had a quote from Biden saying it's Hamas that's preventing a deal, and here is Barak Ravid undermining Israel's position with Mike, a leak. Where did he get this information? It's a leak. Of course, this leak will not be investigated.
Who's the leak from, Gotti?
There's a whole list here. I would guess all.
Okay. My dumbest take, I had two, but I'm just going to give you one here. So here's a scoop from this is a tweet from the national security reporter of Politico, Robbie Gramer. Okay, and Robbie Gramer reports at least 20 senior White House staffers sign a letter dissenting on Biden's decision to walk back an ultimatum conditioning aid to Israel. Not all the staffers work on Mideast policy, but it's the latest sign of dissent over Biden's Israel policy. So I have two things to say to this. What horseshit? I mean, when I went to work in the White House, I had an entry interview from Andy Card, the chief of staff at the time, and it's emblazoned in my. It's what did the
engraved?
Something in the hippocampus. It's indelible in the hippocampus. I'll never ever remember this. I never ever forget this. He said, you work at the pleasure of the president. One day, your job is to help the president formulate and implement policies according to his ideas. One day, the president is going to wake up and he's going to decide that he doesn't want to see your face around here anymore. When that day comes, and it will come, you are to leave here, and this is very important, you are to leave with grace. He said, do you know who Donald Regan is? And I said, yes. He said, what do you remember about Donald Regan? And I said, Mr. President, I resign. Donald Regan was the chief of staff of President Ronald Reagan, and he ran afoul of Nancy Reagan. He got very angry, and he had this one-letter resignation letter, Dear Mr. President, I resign, and it made news. So I said,
because it was blunt and curt.
Yes, yeah, blunt and curt. Dear Mr. President, I resign. That was it. So I said, Dear Mr. President, I resign to Andy Card. He said, that's right. That's right. He said, Don Regan had a long and distinguished career. A long and distinguished career and had many different positions. Do you have a $20 bill in your pocket? And I said, yes. And he said, take it out. I took it out. And he said, whose signature do you see on that $20 bill? I said, Don Regan, because Don Regan had been Secretary of Treasury, and Secretary of Treasury signs the bills, the signatures on the bills. He said, that's right. He said, did you know that you had Don Regan's signature in your pocket? I said, no, I didn't. He said, all you remember is the angry and petulant signature that he put on that one-line resignation letter. Don't be Donald Regan. You don't want to be remembered for your petulance and anger, etc. Fantastic interview it was.
It sounds like a mess sergeant, not like a chief of staff.
No, it was Andy Card. I don't know if he's still with us or not. I assume he's still with us, but he's a gentleman's gentleman, and I'm not actually describing it very well because it was a very pleasant conversation and a pleasant tone. He was really just a fantastic chief of staff. Really, a serious guy, but also very human, easily approachable. So I haven't described it right, but anyway, that was the conversation. But so two things here. The point number one is that if you're unhappy in the White House, get the hell out. This is like you don't have the right. You're there to serve the president.
Don't dissent based on your own
with the president. This is so stupid. But the president
and I had a disagreement.
yeah. And you're not even working on Middle East policy. You're working on, climate change or something, and you're complaining about this. But the other thing, Gotti, and this is the point, like I said, this is all being orchestrated. It's all being orchestrated. And even if this isn't being orchestrated by Biden, they're getting the signal. All of these staffers who are dissenting, all these people are power-hungry careerist people. That they thought that this was going to damage their career. Right? They would never, ever do it. There's no risk involved in this activity whatsoever. These are not people who are standing up on principle, come what may. This is they're playing with house money as far as they're concerned. So look, it's amazing in this administration. All of this is, remember this sanctions machine that the Biden team created. Part of what it did was it created all of these, it produced these proposals for sanctions that then Biden turned down. So, for example, the sanctions machine proposed sanctioning Ben-Gvir, and then Biden nixed that. It went all the way up to the White House, and Biden nixed it. And yet that got leaked, and we learned all about it. Have we heard one single leak about what the Biden administration is negotiating with Iran about the ceasefire in Gaza. Do we know anything about those negotiations? No, nothing. But we know everything about all this turmoil about Israel. Creating the turmoil is part of the policy in order to create the news stories and so on. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. This is a campaign. Yes, there may be leaks here and there around it, but it is a campaign orchestrated out of the White House one way or another.
Yeah, in order to try and increase the pressure on Netanyahu. It all goes to back to the same issue. They have been trying to oust Netanyahu from October 7 and on. And it was even before they had any friction with Netanyahu, because they calculated that October 7 is going to damage their two-state plan and that Netanyahu should be removed. I think it was a cold-blooded decision, not an angry response to anything Netanyahu did.
But it's also domestic American politics. It's also Trump versus the progressives. The saddest people. I actually know this from talking to people, so I'm not just imagining it, but it is easy to imagine. There are two groups in the State Department right now that are walking around completely numb, but bumping into walls because they can't. They don't know, which way is up, which way is down, which way is right, which way is left. And those groups are the climate change people and the Palestine people. In the Democratic Party, there is a temple to Palestine, and all of the keepers of the temple realize that when Donald Trump comes in, they're basically going to be out of a job. So all the temple keepers are. But
also the pro-Iranian. The ring. I wonder what is going to happen to Mrs. Tabatabai, or I'm not sure I'm pronouncing. Tabatabai, and all the rest of the soft influence groups of Iran and possible FARA violating agents.
I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to go to ground. They're going to hide. They're going to burrow deep into the bureaucracy, and some of them are going to hide, and then they'll just leak information out. But some of them will wait about 3 or 4 months, and then they will resign in protest, and we'll get there'll be some really big resignations. About 3 months into the Trump administration.
We'll wait for that, and it will
be reported as career
diplomats can't stand the amateurishness of this fascist administration. Exactly. The bureaucrats do the same everywhere. Thanks for watching this show that is as sane as possible under the circumstances. Exactly. Don't forget to like our channel and subscribe to it, and we will see you next week.